Abhishek, thanks a lot for joining today. It's always a pleasure. I think we have been trying to do this conversation a lot earlier as well. I think one of the good news which we have already got this year is that 5G has been rolled out. Most of the telecom players were already sort of making themselves infrastructure ready for a 5G to be rolled out. I'm sure it will take some time, but it will not be a situation where we will never see the day of the light of the 5G being rolled out. It's been pending for last 2 years. Before the pandemic, the process started. But I personally feel that 5G has sort of a potential to go into use cases which will grow exponentially. I mean, 5G will first of all connect a sort of a highway infrastructurally to every home, right? Every phone will have such kind of a highway from a data perspective that the use cases would be manufacturing, very different. Education would be very different. Healthcare would be very different. Logistics would be very different. BFSI would be very different. I think I've always maintained this track record saying that it's not an upgrade. It's not a 4G to 5G upgrade. It's a revolution which is bringing, and this revolution needs to be leveraged. But then, obviously, once we have created the 5G, let's say highway, then I'm almost thinking that open source plus 5G and plus, I think that's where the real sort of efficiency sits out. The real growth, I would call it exponential growth, sits out. And, you being from a Red Hat, Abhishek, I think it's very important for audience to understand how 5G and this one would flare out as an open source, as a couple, as a team together, what it powers actually.
Yeah, I think Shalil, thanks firstly for inviting me and setting up the context, right? I think 5G, absolutely, like you mentioned, everybody's looking up to exciting times ahead. We may all say that 5G is a bit, India probably may be a little bit behind the curve, but I would say that never late than now. And secondly, if you look at 5G, I think, the potential that it presents to the Indian demographic is much, much more better than any other geography across the world, right? Yeah. So yeah. I think it's really promising for all of us. And you rightfully articulated, right? I think before I come to open source and 5G, it's very important to understand that yes, we are taking a generation leap, right? At the end of the day, it's not just a button that we are switching and we are moving from 4 to 5. This provides us enormous opportunities of the industry 4.0 revolution, massive machine-to-machine communication, so on and so forth. So this will be that wave of, industrial revolution that we are all looking forward to. Now, you also absolutely correctly mentioned that, the operators are gearing for it. They have been, right? They've been deciding those architectures. They've been making those smart moves to make sure that their network is absolutely upgradable as soon as they get the airwaves. And we've been working a lot with them closely, because we've been seeded as a part of their network stack as a cloud provider. We know that they've been making all the right moves. But if you look at the conversation with any operator, right, I think the case for 5G and the case for 5G monetization is not going to be B2C, right? The mobile penetration today in India is 6 to 7%. The cost of smartphones is already an entry barrier. But if you look at cost of smart 5G phones, it's going to be a little bit more of a barrier in itself, right? So to get to people to buy these expensive 5G enabled smartphone, it's going to take some time. And the use cases also for the end user from a B2C, I think they will evolve over time. Whereas if you look at the other side of the spectrum from a B2C standpoint, the cases that you just mentioned, right? Look at the hospitality segment, education segment. There is this huge base that is sitting to be addressed with this 5G enabled network provided by the service providers. And now coming back to the point when you said the marriage between 5G and open source, absolutely, I think it makes sense. Because if you think of it, the transformation that was started by the operators, and we've been working with them very closely, was on the 4G era, right? Where we help them in making sure that they start disaggregating their stacks, right? When you start doing disaggregation, you tend to realize, I need this hardware, can I commoditize it? I need this software. Can I commoditize it? And this is the application on top. Can I have something which is interoperable, and can I have more choices on the top, right? This
Sure.
is exactly what we've been doing in 4G, right? And if you look at the 4G ecosystem, it's the traditional ecosystem that exists today of the big, European, not so much Chinese now, but more so European and American suppliers that are seeded within the network, which also are our partners when we, started the 4G network transformation. Now, come to think of 5G when we are talking about these B2C use cases. Today I and you can probably count 5 or 10 use cases on our fingers, right? We don't even know how they will evolve. We don't even know where that new age ISV who's, snapping up and saying that I find this to be an excellent use case coming up. Now, if you have this large ecosystem who's constantly trying to evolve and trying to solve a business problem, which we can't foresee today, right?
Yeah.
You cannot have something which is proprietary, which is running on the edge of the operator, right? The provider edge. You need to have something which is open, which can be latched onto pretty easily, has the lowest entry barriers, both in terms of, architecture and complexity, right? And that is where I think open source, and that is where Red Hat kind of comes into picture and says that we would provide an environment which is like a standard operating, environment where you can come, if the source is open, you can come on board yourself, you can do the interoperability testing, you can try out regression testing and make sure that this is ready and available to be consumed, right? And if you consider that one use case can be fulfilled for one sector, imagine if they want to run 2 use cases on the same edge, right? Then there is going to be an issue of interoperability. So if every application provider on ISV comes with its own stack, it's going to make life difficult for whoever owns the provider edge. That's why what we are advocating, right from the beginning, is standardize the cloud environment right from the core to the edge. Make sure that the edge is open. Make sure ISVs can come and collaborate. They can be interoperable. We can provide flexibilities in architecture. They can deploy and, thereon monetize whatever use cases. I guess that is how I would say the 5G and open source marriage can, come into fruition.
Oh, absolutely, Abhishek. I think very well articulated, I must say. I mean, I also learned a few things from when you articulated. What I kind of got from you is that this is where open source powers 5G, because 5G is making data democratic. And I think as we move forward, whether a B2B or a B2C environment or a B2B2BC environment, I think data democratization is very, very important. So one is that part. Second part, I think what you're trying to say is also about, the curve on innovation. When ISVs sort of sit on open source, the barrier is very low for them, and they can increase the pace of innovation and use cases using the both open source plus 5G network, and in fact, so that's again a very big benefit to the people who probably needed a low barrier entry to innovate few things, and rightly said as well that where 5G is a B2C environment today, slowly it will increase to a B2B side of the story, and we don't know which use cases will fare up. So we need a testing ground, we need an open ground where even a Ranji Trophy can be played, or 2020 can be played, and a local cricket can be also played, right? You really need that kind of an open ground, right?
I think you summed it up perfectly. I think what you need is an open field, right? And then you
Yes.
don't care about what kind of matches are played there, as long as the pitch is good to sustain that, right? And what that pitch, I would kind of relate to what open source provides, right?
Absolutely. Good. Thank you, Abhishek. I think it's a short and a brief one today, but yes, that brief one was very important. I learned a few things today. I'm sure my audience will also have learned it. I mean, it's pleasure to have you on the platform today. Thank you very much. We'll continue our discussion in next episodes going forward as well.
Thanks, Shalil. And I appreciate your time. Glad talking to you again. Thank you.
Same here. Same here. It's an honor to have a discussion with you.